Hey guys, here today with another knife. This one is the Martin Q36 Super Slim. I had acquired this knife at Friday Night Blade Affair of this year, and I thought this would be a great kind of preface to, just Martin knives in general, but also the fact that since RJ has done a collaboration with Sergey with the Russian Overkill, it would be nice to, take a look at one of his knives, especially a knife that I've had the chance to handle, and kind of, look back at it later on when I'm reviewing the Russian Overkill. Now, this knife is a full-size folder. If we take a look, you can compare the size to an F95 type knife, and you can see they're in the same ballpark. So you're having a very, very nicely designed full-size knife with an excellent blade to handle ratio. Now you can see right here, these knives are actually lined up pivot to pivot, and as you can see, both the tips of the knives and the pommel area line up pretty much exactly. So as we all know, F95s have very, very excellent blade to handle ratio, and that is no exception as well with the Q36. Now this model in particular has a Mike Norris Damascus clad blade with a mono steel in the middle and a Damascus frame. We also have a Damascus clip and also zirconium hardware. Let's take a look at the blade. Again, around the same size as an F95. We have a blade length of approximately, I want to say 3.85 inches of actual cutting edge. You can actually see that the cutting edge doesn't go all the way back to the plunge. It actually goes back somewhere, ends right around here. But around the same cutting edge as an F95, and you have a overall length of just a hair under 9 inches. Now, if we take a look at the weight of the knife, let's see if my scale will load here. It doesn't like me holding it. We can see that the knife weighs around 4.08 ounces. Sorry, 5.08 ounces. There you go, just a hair over 5 ounces. Now, again, this is my first time personally handling RJ's work. I've been very impressed ever since learning about the collaboration with Sergey. So I checked out his stuff at Blade Show and checked out his knives at Friday Night Blade Affair, and I'm very surprised at how consistent his knives are. RJ Martins are, legendary for the design as a tactical flipper knife, having an excellent flipping action, having a very unique detent sound and lockup sound as well. And again, very consistent maker. All of his knives I've felt have had pretty much the same action, and I'm very impressed by that. And there's a lot of features actually going through this knife, and that I've learned that coincides with many of the opinions and thoughts that I've heard from people who are very interested in RJ's work as well. So I kind of just want to go over that from my perspective. One of the first things I notice is this recurve blade. Personally, I'm not really a big fan of recurves, but I think this one is a very tastefully done one, especially with this unique curved plunge grind as well. The flowing lines of this knife fit very well with the overall aesthetic of the design. Moving on to the actual, moving towards the back of the knife, this jimping right here is very functional. Personally, I'm a fan of, kind of a standard tight, more lines per inch type of jimping as you would see on, say, like a Chris Reeve or a production Shirogorov. And every time I see a wide jimping, I'm always worried that the jimping won't be aggressive enough or won't have enough bite. And I'm pleasantly surprised with what RJ has done here on his jimping, even though it's, much wider than you would see on more traditional type jimping. This must be a combination of both the machining and also the finishing as well. I'm really glad to see, I love the look of the aggressive wider jimping, but I always want something that, doesn't just look aggressive, but actually has that bite when you actually go and choke up on the knife. So really glad to see that here on RJ's design. Moving back, you can see the backspacer right here. Now, when I first saw the backspacer, I was a little intrigued on why it was kind of sunk into the handle of the knife. With most backspacers, you'd see most makers would strive to have either something flush or something a little bit proud of the scales, you know, with like a gear pattern, you know, something that you would see on, for example, like a Shirogorov like this or something like that. And after handling the knife, I think I can see what's going on here. You can see that the jimping actually continues on to the handles, right? But if you run your finger over the outsides of the handles, you know, you can feel the jimping, but it's not really biting you at all. And that's because there's a very generous chamfer applied to the outside. But since this backspacer is kind of sunk into the handles with that, you know, jimping pattern on the backspacer as well, when you actually go and you grab the knife from the middle, you can definitely feel that jimping start to kick in and really dig into your hand. And so very aggressive jimping. Now, it doesn't hurt, but you can definitely feel it. You know, it's just like the jimping up here on the front of the blade. It's a very excellent design. I know it looks a little weird having that sunken backspacer, but the fact that he didn't chamfer the inside of the jimping on the handles alongside with that countersunk backspacer really allows your palm to sink in there and really grab the jimping right here on this back pommel area. So very well done, and I'm very impressed with that design actually. Now moving on to the frame, again, this is a full Damascus frame with a satin finish on the titanium lock side. The clip is also Damascus, and both sides again have this wonderful milling pattern, kind of like a starburst with a faux bolster. Now this isn't a real bolster, as you can tell. It just doesn't have any machining, and it's just completely flat up here, while the handles are contoured and have a milling pattern on them. You can see this on many of the Q36s actually, so nothing too unique here. I do love this starburst pattern though. If you take a look here, you can see that the contouring on the handle in conjunction with the milling pattern really brings out the colors of the Damascus. Now personally, I'm a fan of matte Damascus, and I was talking with RJ about the different finishes that he does. When I first saw the knife, at a glance, I thought that he had done it in a matte Damascus, but really what's going on here is that the radial milling here is kind of diffusing the light. So depending on what angle you look at the knife, you know, you get some areas of matte and some areas of glossiness, and that looks really nice. And I think it's really cool because, you know, depending on the angle that you look at the knife, you can get very different colors out of the Damascus and differing levels of glossiness. So really nice job there, and very impressed with that milling. Now again, what RJs are most known for is that flipping action, and this one is insane. These things flip fast. I think nobody can deny that RJ has something very special here with this design. These knives have an extremely hard detent, but unlike many other makers that I know or that I've handled, where they're setting extremely hard detents to kind of achieve that excellent flipping action at the expense of having a knife that perhaps is, you know, gritty or kind of tight with the pivot overly tightened or something like that. This knife right here has both an excellent flipping action and is not tight at all. The detent, or sorry, the lock bar tension is not detrimentally affecting the smoothness of the knife in any way, and I really love that. That's even more impressive when you consider the fact that the blade is clad in Damascus, which has multiple layers. Personally, and that's the reason why I prefer mono steel, is you can kind of feel that detent ball rolling across the layers of Damascus that you wouldn't get with like a mono steel. But this knife has a very smooth action when shutting, even with that Damascus cladding. So very impressive there as well. Overall, I would say I really love the knife. There are a couple nitpicks that I do have with it though. The first one I would say would be the lock bar insert. As you can see here, it's held with 2 screws. Not a killer, you know, having 1 screw would be best, I think, for just having a minimal design. But again, I can understand what he might want to do too to really secure that lock bar insert in place. There is a little bit of milling, kind of chatter. I guess you would say like some remnants of the screw tapping right here that you can see. Now, when you actually run your fingers over it, you can't really feel it. It's kind of just more of an aesthetic thing. The lock bar insert, however, does run a little bit of proud. You can see that the handles are very nicely chamfered, but the lock bar insert itself is not chamfered to quite the same degree. And if you run your fingers over it, you can kind of feel that kind of catching on your finger. I'm not sure if this is specific with my Q36 Super Slim, but it is something that I did notice with this particular model that I didn't have time to check out with the other knives as well. But that's pretty much it. I know I said a couple nitpicks. Really, those two are the only ones I could find. The rest of the knife is very well done. Again, I also love this finish that he did here on the titanium side. He kind of did like a satin finish on the faux bolster on the side as well. So really nicely done. Very nicely finished. But overall, again, can't speak too much. I know I've had a lot of my videos with a lot of comparisons to different other knives that I've handled, but again, since this is my first time handling an RJ Martin, I don't have too much to reference from besides what I've heard from other makers. And again, I'd have to reiterate that I definitely agree with all aspects in terms of the design and the flipping action and the fit and finish. So I'm really glad to handle this one and looking forward to the collaboration Russian Overkill as well next year. So I hope you guys enjoyed this in-depth look at the RJ Martin Q36 Super Slim. I hope you guys have a great day.